Okay, I think we're live and hopefully folks can see and hear me. Welcome everyone who's made the time this morning to be part of our public meeting. We're excited to be here and we'll get started here. I'm Matt Wells. I am the branch chief of the Watershed Restoration Grants Branch for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And again, we are really excited to have this opportunity to present an overview of the statutory exemption of restoration projects from CEQA and talk a little bit about how this fits into our Cutting the Green Tape initiative. We have over 600 folks on today's call, so we're really excited that folks have turned out and are interested in hearing about this exciting new program. We are recording today's presentation. We will make a copy of that recording available on our website, as well as a copy of the presentation that we're going to run through. Because of so many attendees, you cannot talk and unmute. So we have everyone muted. We will have the means for questions to be submitted, and we'll get into that. Lauren, do you want to go ahead and go to the next screen? So here is the agenda for today. And before we go through that, I have a few folks with me here today, including the department's Deputy Director of Ecosystem Conservation Division, Chad Dibble, our Grant Program and Policy and Outreach Manager, Lauren Barva, as well as our new Program Manager for Cutting the Green Tape, Mr. Brad Henderson. So again, the goal of today's meeting is to provide an overview of the department's efforts to implement a process to carry out our role in the new statutory CEQA exemption for certain restoration projects. This process really fits within the spirit and intent of Cutting the Green Tape, a name that not only broadly represents a collective spirit in an effort to increase the pace and scale of restoration, but this name actually also refers to a new program within the department designed to do just that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. With the number of attendees, as I mentioned, we have muted all attendees. You may submit comments and questions using the chat feature. Or the Q&A feature, excuse me. We've disabled the chat feature. We've disabled the raise your hand. So we will open up the Q&A to allow you to submit comments and questions, which we will address at the end. We're probably not going to be able to get through all of your questions and comments today, but our goal is to address some of the larger themes that appear through the comments and questions today. We are going to take every comment and question received and use that to inform our FAQ and the direction of the program itself. But before we get into that, we're going to hear for a few opening remarks from a couple key members of our leadership. Dr. Jennifer Norris, the first ever Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat from the Natural Resources Agency, who leads the agency's own Cutting the Green Tape efforts, as well as our Department Director, Mr. Chuck Bonham. So we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to turn it over to Jen if you're ready.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'm really glad to see such a great turnout. It's a really important topic and really important for all of you to be engaged and part of our community of practice as we put this into place. So it's been almost 2 years since the Resources Agency formally launched Cutting Green Tape, which is really, as Matt mentioned, an effort to increase the pace and scale of restoration in California, recognizing that we have a lot of restoration that needs doing, and we don't have a lot of time to waste. And so looking for ways to improve our processes, our policies, how we do our funding, improving interagency cooperation, all of this comes under the umbrella of Cutting Green Tape in an effort to get conservation on the ground in imperiled ecosystems that really need help. So this CEQA exemption that we're going to talk about today is really sort of the latest in a series of actions that we're taking. We're trying as pilots, we're testing, we're taking input from partners all over the state, and really working in collaboration across the restoration community to try to do our work better and more efficiently. Cutting Green Tape is definitely not about doing away with the rules. It's about getting good projects on the ground in the most effective way possible. And the Department of Fish and Wildlife has been working on this front for a long time. They joined in and relabeled what they were doing as cutting green tape, and we're part of a team. And I think they're going to talk about some of that today. Again, I just want to give my commitment to all of you that we're really glad to be in this dialogue with you and welcome all of your thoughts and input as we implement this exemption. And I'll turn it over to Chuck.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Matt, Chad, Lauren, Brad, 600 people plus is, I don't know how to process that. Amazing, terrifying, an opportunity. Here's how I'd like to start and just thank each of you. Y'all are practitioners, whatever role you may be in as a participant now, local government, another state agency, tribe, conservation group, water district, landowner. We all have a shared, I think, set of values relative to the greatness of California. And one of the reasons it's so great is our natural splendor. You know that, you practice in this space. For decades, people have done things like create faster processes to build stadiums for football. Yet when you get to today, no one's really thought through what might it look like to do good projects faster for the benefit of the environment. So that's how we arrive at this moment with the first ever exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. And to be honest, I'm see it as an opportunity, but I'm also kind of super nervous because we have to be careful, we have to be thoughtful, we have to be deliberate on how we handle this thing that is now in our shared community's hands to employ. We need to make sure we're doing things transparently. We're going to need each of you that may want us to use this authority to do a lot of due diligence as lead agencies. We're going to want to make sure we're collectively thinking about the long-term value of this tool. I can imagine there's a pent-up energy to come to us and say, here's all the first applications of it that should be utilized. And it's not an end run. Regardless this exemption, the department stands completely on its existing commitments to our partners in sovereign nations and the tribal community to make sure we're doing consultation with our tribal partners if we were to use the exemption. Same runs true for good neighbors that might be worried about the use of an exemption for a nearby restoration project. So this is new. We're going to have to iterate. There'll be some bumps. We're going to smooth them out over time. But at the end of the day, I would ask you to think about this as an opportunity, and you share the use of this kind of tool with us. If we all misuse it, we try to apply it to projects which are on the margins. If we force a round peg into a square peg into a round hole, it's not going to work. So I know this is going to be a journey, and I think it's an exciting opportunity, and I'm really confident working with you all as a community of practitioners, this will be a value add to the restoration space in California. We're going to see a presentation that's a set of slides. I'm going to go off video, but I'm totally engaged and ready for the Q&A, and I look forward to that part of this presentation. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Chuck and Jennifer. Thank you both for your words. And I think Chuck really covered sort of the department's sort of view of this process at this point. It's very exciting. There's a lot of moving pieces, and we're ready to move forward, but we're doing so carefully and purposely. We're going to dive into the overview of this process. But before we do that, I want to provide a quick overview of the department's Cutting the Green Tape grant program, program. Next slide. So this is a new program within the department starting this year, following a pilot initiative last year, supported by the administration with one-time funding to allocate resources behind new granting and permitting efficiencies. Last year's proof of concept led to a permanent cutting the green tape program for the department with sustained funding, new positions throughout the department to really focus on new improvements and sustained efforts to ease restoration from a granting and permitting perspective. As mentioned, the CEQA Exemption Initiative really fits within the spirit and intent of cutting the green tape, and the process itself will actually be administered by the department's Cutting the Green Tape team, a multidisciplinary team representing staff both in our granting branch, our environmental permitting headquarters branch, our department regions, as well with support of our general counsel and leadership. Next slide. So again, the structure of cutting the green tape really incorporates two functions of the department, which have been historically separated by organization, yet intrinsically related: granting and permitting. Grant recipients carrying out restoration projects enter a separate door of the department to obtain necessary permitting, with a little assistance from the granting side. We know there are improvements to be made within the realm of grant administration, and with the support and input of our stakeholders, we've actually made a lot of progress in that area, and we're continuing on that path. We also see an opportunity to streamline the permitting process, pursue new programmatic permitting opportunities, and work closely with our stakeholders and sister agencies to carry out these efforts. And with a dedicated Cutting the Green Tape team, we can actually continue these efforts with intent and focus, including permitting strike teams, Cutting the Green Tape staff who will actually shepherd grant-funded projects throughout both the granting and permitting process to ensure that projects happen more quickly and can really hit the ground running. Next slide. So looking forward into this year and beyond, we have a lot on our plate. It's a big year for Cutting the Green Tape. We're standing up a brand new program within the department, hiring new staff, managing change throughout our department. We're continuing a number of efforts preceding this program, including initiatives started under last year's pilot effort and even beyond that. Our focus in the short term is the delivery of this new CEQA exemption process, which we will now talk about. And with that, I'm actually going to turn things over to the newest member of our team, Brad Henderson, who was recently hired as the environmental program manager for the statewide Cutting the Green Tape program. Brad brings a wealth of experience, having worked in several department regions and functions over the past 20 years. He was instrumental actually in the development of the restoration management permit template, which was one of our initiatives carried out last year under the pilot effort. And we really look forward to moving forward into this year and getting this program off the ground. So Brad, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Matt. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today, really excited about this opportunity and to be part of Cutting Green Tape. So let's talk about the CEQA Statutory Exemption for restoration projects. I'm going to give you some background here. This came about via Senate Bill 155. It was a budget trailer bill signed by Governor Newsom on September 23rd of this year, and it became effective immediately. So today we're going to discuss a specific component of SB 155, the addition of section 21080.56 to the California Public Resources Code and to CEQA. This new section provides a new statutory CEQA exemption for certain restoration, conservation, or species recovery projects. This whole thing is sort of a mouthful, so we propose referring to this new process as CERC, which is shorthand for the CEQA Statutory Exemption for Restoration Projects. So a couple things before we dive into this, just to set the stage. In order to qualify for this new statutory exemption, two things need to happen. First, projects need to meet several specific requirements in the new statute as determined by the CEQA lead agency. And secondly, the CDFW Director will concur with the lead agency's determinations. This is an exciting new CEQA option as well as a new process for all of us. CDFW and lead agencies will need to coordinate closely along with practitioners and project proponents to create an efficient and successful process. Next slide, please. Both the CEQA lead agency and CDFW have specific roles and responsibilities for applying the new statutory exemption. It's really important to pause here and consider stakeholders when deciding whether or not to pursue the statutory exemption for a given project. CEQA employs an informed and transparent public decision-making process. This process provides information to decision makers and to the public about the potential environmental effects of proposed projects. CDFW encourages and supports lead agency efforts to meet and confer with local residents, neighbors, public officials, and California Native American tribes prior to submitting a CERP concurrence request to us. And as Chuck mentioned, this is not an end run. We really need to be cautious, careful, and mindful as we work through this. Lead agencies should also evaluate whether a project may fit into an existing exemption, such as a categorical exemption. For example, the small habitat restoration exemption, also known as Class 33. After deciding to pursue the statutory exemption, the lead agency has several responsibilities. The first is making determinations regarding the project pursuant to subdivisions A through D of the new statute. And we'll talk about this in great detail in the next slide. The second is obtaining concurrence from the CDFW Director for the required determinations. And third, the lead agency files a notice of exemption with the Office of Planning and Research within 48 hours. On the CDFW side, upon request, we will review, consider the lead agency's determinations. We'll then provide the CDFW Director's written concurrence with the lead agency's determinations. That concurrence is based on substantial evidence and best available science. And finally, CDFW will post the Director's concurrence on our CEQA webpage. Next slide, please. This slide highlights key sections of the new statute, and there's a lot to unpack here. So we'll just go through it slowly. Subdivision A says, in order to qualify for the statutory exemption, a project must exclusively be one of the following. The first, a project to conserve, restore, protect, or enhance, and assist in the recovery of California native fish and wildlife and the habitat upon which they depend, or a project to restore or provide habitat for California native fish and wildlife. On to subdivision B. An eligible project may have incidental public benefits, such as public access and recreation. And I think the word incidental is key. Really note that word in the subdivision. Subdivision C says to qualify for this exemption, a project must do both of the following. First, result in long-term net benefits to climate resiliency, biodiversity, and sensitive species recovery, and include procedures and ongoing management for the protection of the environment. Subdivision D. This exemption does not apply to a project that includes construction activities, except for construction activities solely related to habitat restoration. All right, well, that was a lot to comprehend, and we're not done yet. But don't worry, we're all processing this along with everyone else. So let's go on to subdivision E, which is really the crux. Subdivision E says, the lead agency shall obtain the concurrence of the Director of Fish and Wildlife for the determinations required pursuant to subdivisions A to D inclusive. The CDFW Director shall document concurrence using substantial evidence and best available science. Subdivision E is really the cornerstone, I think. It sets up the whole process. The lead agency prepares determinations, and note that that word is plural, not singular. And it's for all items in subdivisions A through D. And once doing that, the lead agency obtains the CDFW Director's concurrence. Also make note of the requirement for substantial evidence and best available science. So there really was a lot to unpack there. Next slide, please. Here's some other provisions of the new statute. Within 48 hours of making a determination that a project is exempt pursuant to this new statute, the lead agency will file a notice of exemption with the Office of Planning and Research, and CDFW will post the director's concurrence on its website. Projects that we've concurred with remain subject to all other applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations, including environmental permitting, and shall not weaken or violate any applicable environmental or public health standards. The Natural Resources Agency will file annual reports to the legislature. And finally, the new statute sunsets on January 1st, 2025. Next slide, please. So this is a very busy slide, hopefully showing how busy we've been thinking about this new process and trying to get ourselves set up to handle these concurrence requests. We've been developing a proposed process for acting on lead agency concurrence requests, and there's a few things to note before we dive deep into this. Please remember, this is a work in progress. We're sure to make some adjustments in our procedures as we work through future requests and learn from them. It's probably too early to predict whether any specific project or type of project would or would not qualify for the exemption. This presentation will not get into a project-specific level of detail. If you are a project proponent, please coordinate with your CEQA lead agency very early in the process. Remember that they're the ones who prepare the determinations. So here's an overview of our recommended process. We recommend that the lead agency contacts the Cutting the Green Tape program staff in advance of making a concurrence request. This will enable early feedback, and CDFW can advise the lead agency on the types of documentation that would help facilitate concurrence. It will also help us to get a good understanding of the project. We'd use that opportunity to identify and work through any issues as early as possible. You can contact us via the restoration permitting at wildlife.ca.gov inbox. We'll show this inbox again at the end of the presentation, and it will be posted on the Cutting the Green Tape webpage. The second step is the lead agency will submit its concurrence request. Its required determinations, remember, subdivisions A through D, and other supporting evidence to CDFW. CDFW has prepared a recommended CERP request form, which we'll show you in just a minute. Third step, CDFW will evaluate the lead agency's determinations for concurrence. The Cutting the Green Tape program and other CDFW functions will work together as needed. Fourth step, staff will work with the lead agency to resolve any issues. If non-concurrence is anticipated, the issue will be elevated to CDFW leadership for discussion. If following that discussion, non-concurrence still seems likely, the lead agency may withdraw the request. Don't be discouraged, because the other CEQA streamlining tools are coming online soon, most notably the State Water Board's Programmatic Environmental Impact Report for statewide large restoration projects, which may become available in the spring of next year. And number 5, the CDFW issues the concurrence and posts it online within 48 hours. Once this flowchart is finalized, we'll be posting it on our Cutting the Green Tape webpage. Next slide, please. So here's the form. This is our recommended form. It's a simple 2-page fillable PDF form, which will assist with the concurrence request process. Completion and submission of the form will be voluntary but highly recommended. The lead agency's determinations, along with the form and any attachments, may be submitted via the Environmental Permit Information Management System, otherwise known as EPIMS document repository. The link is at the top of the form. We'll discuss the lead agency's determinations in more detail in the next slide. So on this first page of the form, we're looking for basic information: lead agency information, project proponent information, and basic project information: the name of the project, the duration of the project, location, the size, brief project summary, and expected environmental outcomes. If you wish to attach additional informational documents, there's a box to check, and you can indicate which attachments provide that information and where that information can be found. Because in many cases, there are going to be existing documents that have the information, and why recreate the wheel. Next slide, please. So page 2 of the form is where we really get to the meat and potatoes of the actual required determinations. So let's dive into that for a second. The lead agency's required determinations, as a reminder, again, the lead agency shall obtain the concurrence of the Director of Fish and Wildlife for the determinations required pursuant to subdivisions A to D inclusive. And so we've provided a space here, and we've also, we have some recommendations about maybe what that determinations document would look like. We recommend that the lead agencies prepare these determinations as a separate document submitted along with the SERP request form. And to facilitate CDFW's meeting review and concurrence, the determinations document should provide the following information: project description and other project information that were used to make the determinations, and then the lead agency's determinations for each of the eligibility criteria, A through D, substantial evidence and best available science that the lead agency's determinations were based upon, and certification that the determinations represent the lead agency's independent judgment. For example, the lead agency may include a signature at the end of the determinations document. So that's the attached determinations document. As far as completing this page of the request form, the lead agency may summarize each of the determinations in the spaces provided and check the appropriate box if supplemental evidence or scientific information is attached. And this can be, supplemental evidence can include existing documents such as project designs or plans, maps, basis of design reports, species survey reports, federal biological assessments or biological opinions, grant funding applications or proposals, just to mention a few. Anything that'll help with CDFW's concurrence is what we're looking for here. For example, a project might be mentioned in a recovery plan as a recovery action. That would be a great thing to cite. Finally, you would electronically sign the form and submit it to CDFW along with all the attachments. Next slide, please. Here's a few other details on the concurrence process that we're thinking about. SERP review will be conducted by both headquarters and regional cutting the green tape staff. And as Matt mentioned, we're bringing those staff on board now. Additional technical staff will be consulted whenever necessary. CDFW will swing back around and engage with the lead agency when needed. The director's concurrence, again, will be based on substantial evidence and best available science. We'll provide the concurrence to the lead agency and we'll post the concurrence on our CEQA notices webpage. And we hope to initiate at least one pilot concurrence during 21 and maybe even finish one. I don't want to make too many promises, but that would be great. But we're really targeting January 2022 to make this SERP concurrence process widely available. And at least at the beginning, we're anticipating about a 90-day timeline for the first few of these as we get the program up and running. Next slide, please. Show you a sneak peek of a webpage. It's not up and running yet, but we're developing it as we speak. Cutting the green tape webpage that will also include information about SERP to help assist with tips and tricks and tools to help with these requests, as well as another big part of the Cutting the Green Tape program, which is restoration permitting. We also plan to post example lead agency determinations as they become available. And if you have any ideas for the webpage, please let us know. We'd love to hear about them. Next slide, please. So please get in touch with us if you have CEQA or restoration permitting questions following this workshop. Although we might not yet have all the answers at our fingertips, we'll do our best to find the best pathways to expedite your restoration projects. And this concludes our first look at the SERP concurrence process. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Thank you, Brad. That was great. And that was a lot. That was a lot to take in. As mentioned, we will make this presentation available, a copy of the slides that Brad presented, as well as a recording of today's presentation. But as you can see, a lot of work's been done behind the scenes to get this up and running, and we're really excited to move forward. So with that, we're gonna move into the Q&A section of today's meeting. As mentioned, you can use the Q&A feature with Zoom to submit questions and comments. We have a lot of questions coming in. We may not be able to get to every question today, And I'm going to phone a friend and include Chad Dibble and Chuck Bonham to help me navigate these questions and comments. So we'll go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. This will be
Chuck,
for
you're-
anyone on the panel. I'd say just jump in. Chuck, if you have
And
some
we
opening thoughts.
yeah, we shouldn't let Dr. Norris off the hook either. So, hey, so we'll curate on our side, and we've all lived through this for a year and a half. We're not going to get to every question, as Matt indicates, but we'll keep a record. So I'll start and just say, we've got a question in here about, hey, this is all good and thanks for the leadership, but isn't it going to really push your capacity? And are you able to deliver on the hope and the promise here? It's a great question. I think some of y'all are also right in the middle of something that's been going on in our department for a while called service-based budgeting that looks at just our underlying year after year capacity to do all the work across such a great state. And the questioner points out you got a lot of work in transportation, you got a lot of work in energy. I think my immediate answer is we got an infusion of capacity at the department because of the governor and the legislature's leadership in the same budget. That includes this, no matter what are we calling it, SERP tool. And so we have staff now that allows the department to create this standalone cutting the green tape unit that Brad is leading. Is it enough? Theoretically, no, because the state's 50 million people, fifth biggest economy in the world, but is a great first start. And we're really mindful of showing the capacity increase, these tools, cutting the green tape, produce results. And then hopefully y'all as a community would agree we need to keep building capacity for this kind of work. Chad or Jennifer, you want to say anything on the capacity front?
I would only to echo what you said, Chuck, and that, we're all very mindful of the capacity limitations, and to the extent that we can show success, that will breed more success in this space. But at agency, that's something that we're paying very close attention to and working with DFW to address on all levels. But it's not easy, and it requires the community to speak out on behalf of the department and their need for more support broadly. So we look forward to working with you all on that.
Great. And maybe we could rotate around. Chad, you want to be the one to kind of pull out a question and go next?
Sure, I'll pull it out for us. I think it's front on a lot of people's mind, and it's really just asking about the response of state and federal regulators to this program. What are the other parties' thoughts? Have we got some comments or concerns? I can start off and just say that I think it's a new era for us across the board. So I think there's a learning experience for us in the department to make this work. I think there's a learning experience and a communication need for all of us across state and federal regulators. We've mentioned the need to ensure communication with tribal and local communities to make this work. So I think the overall response is positive in the restoration community and the thoughts that we've seen. I think there's caution. There's some folks that have some things they'd like to know a little more about. And I think as we continue through this journey, we'll be able to address those concerns and make sure that we're putting good restoration on the ground.
Let me add to that too, and maybe this is context and expectation kind of color. It's just one tool in a toolkit, right? So we've got a really fantastic effort that's played out through the State Water Board. And one of the questions is, isn't their effort really about their 401 certifications? Yes. But we worked with the Water Board on that. It's another tool out there now that's new. And a lot of what we've been able to do with the Water Board is then helping our department reach out to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service, because they're doing programmatic biological opinions for restoration. And we want to be able to use what they're doing too as another tool. And then Brad has helped develop the department's own restoration permit within CEQA. So now you have a set of tools, and SERP is one of them, and they all kind of fit together depending on which project is in play. And one of the questions I'll pick next is, why does this thing end in 2025? And let me just be super direct. I can't, Jen and I can't comment on all the dynamics that go on in the legislative space, but I'll just say personally, I think a sunset's important here in the sense that this is a trust issue, right? It's a new opportunity. And I think there's enough nervousness broadly. There was enough concern it might be misabused. A very classic legislative way to give something a chance is to think of it as a pilot. Pilot often translates into sunset. So if the community that's engaged in this call really wants to use this tool, it's incumbent on us to use it deliberately, use it in a way that produces a return of value, and then people will deliberate, in 2025, whether to extend the pilot. That's what you have to be thinking, I think, in your mind as a lead agency. Matt, or Brad, you want to pick a next one?
I think following that, there's a couple questions around time frame, and it might be worth clarifying what it means with regards to the sunset date in terms of if a project is meets the exemption now, but the project is still going after 2025. Can it continue or will it stop? And then our internal process with regards to the 90-day review, the 48-hour turnaround of posting the concurrence. So Brad, do you want to kind of clarify what our review time actually looks like versus posting the concurrence?
Yeah, I think our review time is probably going to start off. We're going to move cautiously and ask a lot of questions and really work through the fairly complex new statute. And then once we've done that a few times, I think that we're really going to cut that time down. And essentially, as soon as the director's concurrence is completed, we'd be posting that right away on our webpage.
Right, and that's the 48-hour that was referenced. So we're not doing the entire review within that 48 hours, but once
we've provided a concurrence, then the lead agency needs to take the next step within 48 hours, which is to post a notice of exemption with OPR.
Chuck, I think we have a couple of questions talking about how this process will play out if the department is the lead agency, and whether nonprofits would typically have us be the lead agency, or folks that don't have a lead agency, and what our thinking is around that as far as the concurrence and how we might play that out. Do you have any thoughts before I maybe try?
I do. My first is to just remind folks, we're not going to have a perfect answer to every question that's showing up, and we've got like 60 questions through the Q&A so far. I also think some of the questions that are showing up are as much about other long-running policy and procedural concerns around the CEQA world as they are about SERP, this specific issue. So look, the dynamic over who's lead, or is there an NGO that can be lead versus there isn't in the department, that's really not about SERP in my mind. I think it's legitimate questions, but kind of separate. And then what about places where the department may own property and wants to use the exemption for its own benefit? I suppose that's a category. But in my mind, there's also an element of optimization here, right? Like what set of projects may be smartest to use first, working with the community that's on the phone. And also, as another idea, Matt and Brad, we run a lot of granting at the department for restoration. And some of our oldest granting programs have a programmatic, CEQA already built in, but some of our newer programs like Prop 1 and Prop 68 don't. So we're also exploring whether like a high return on investment is a way to figure out subsequent RFPs in Prop 1 and 68 and motivate applicants for funding to also be thinking about building the record. So a decision for funding and exemption could happen in the same time space continuum.
That's correct. We can
Yeah.
build that into the process.
So this is new and we're trying to figure it out, which is a reason we wanted this workshop to begin with. So that's a little bit of my way to answer those set of questions. Jen, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I wanted to jump in. I've been looking at these questions, and I guess I would turn it around and say, thank you for your questions, because navigating through this process is going to require us to have a really good understanding of what the concerns are. And that will give us a good information as we work through this implementation. But we also ask that you maintain the dialogue, because as Chuck said, this is a pilot, we're testing it out and we want it to be successful. So we can't answer all these questions, but they're definitely going to be brought back and give us a lot of good things to think about. So thank you.
Yeah. And in that vein, one of the questions is, can you speak to how the department will work towards consistent implementation of SERP through the whole state? So we've already made a pretty conscious decision in response to that question. So we thought about, I'm being real open, we thought about whether this tool should be like delegated out to at our regional level. A lot of y'all work with the department, some of your permitting really just happens almost exclusively at a regional level. And my view is, look, at least right now, my name is implicated in the use of this tool. It says director. So, I'm pretty intent on tracking all this because it ultimately comes to my desk so long as I'm director. So we made a conscious decision to actually structure this through a consolidated centralized unit in headquarters with appropriate tentacles out to our regional for like field understanding. But we've centralized the idea of the use of the authority so that we have a better chance on consistency. Brad or Matt, Chad, I don't know if y'all want to say anything on that topic.
Yeah, I think that covers it. I mean, I think all of these, we're going to be engaged here at headquarters in the Cutting the Green Tape program with all of these. We'll be in constant touch with the regional Cutting the Green Tape staff as they're evaluating these. And it's really going to be a strike team kind of approach.
I have a question here, a couple of questions actually asking about, examples or how do we define substantial evidence, et cetera. And I think the answer is that we're working behind the scenes, which is partly why this isn't live, to think about what types of examples we could provide on the website so that folks have something to look at, some kind of a template to see how that plays out. We also anticipate, as we review kind of a pilot project and work through this with pilot projects or project, we will be posting those. And then as we actually will get through this process and start having projects that we've approved concurrence on, we would actually be posting those. So there will be examples as we move forward. And we are trying to build that library, if you will, so that when we go live, we have some information for you.
Yeah, and from there, let me take another question as a way to also say I need to go off screen for like 5 minutes and deal with something else, but I'll be right back. So there's all kinds of questions that really at the end of the day are posing hypotheticals. What about this type of project? What about that type of project? We're gonna have to work through those kinds of things. And one of the themes in those questions in the Q&A is like, what about size? Is this 3 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres, 100 acres? The way I read the SERP statute is it's not based on size. And we have other things that exist that do have size dynamics. Y'all know we have like expedited approach, for some projects up in, Cohoe territory, which originated with a bill from Mr. Huffman way back when. There's other like legal pathways that relate to size. I don't see this having a size dynamic, but what I'd ask you all to think about in the community, like you've been doing this a long time. Right now, if you close your eyes, I bet you can imagine a project, maybe it's yours or someone else's, and you're like, oh, that's a pretty easy fit, no brainer. And then close your eyes, imagine a project, maybe it's yours or someone else's, and like, it's got a little bit of controversy. It might be on the margins of whether it's exclusive restoration. It might be, well, how does that really involve construction around trail? And so y'all are lead agencies, you're the proponents of these things. Think about which one of those is going to be easier to work through as our first instances. I got to say the former might be a little bit easier compared to the latter, which isn't to say we aren't going to end up grappling with projects like the latter, but it's incumbent on y'all to also help us work through this because of the newness, the trust dynamic, and the opportunity we have.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, Chuck. Thanks. Before you have to step out, thank you.
I'll be right.
There's quite a few questions around, incidental benefits, trails, if I build restrooms, if we do a project that does that. So I think that's helpful. And we're just going to have to think through those a little more. And it's really, I think, key back to what Brad mentioned in the slide a couple of times, which is that consultation piece. And we want to work with you. We don't want to have projects that are super controversial and turn into a no or create problems. So if we can work together to kind of scope out projects as you have ideas or decide whether this is actually the right avenue for the project, again, mentioning that there's several other avenues in play now and on the way for parties to sort of expedite their CEQA process. We want to work with you to figure out what the right venue is, what the right door to go in is, and try to just keep all projects moving, not just projects that might fall into this concurrence process. So that's definitely something we're going to keep in mind and ask you to work with us to help figure out. Let's see. Any other questions that jump out at you all on the panel?
There's a number of questions around how this exemption relates to other permits, state issued permits by the department, by other agencies. So we can probably clarify, what that looks like.
Go ahead. Yeah, so other state agencies that have discretionary actions that are CEQA events, so to speak, I believe that the path forward, and we can just use CDFW as an example. If the lead agency goes through this CERP process, obtains the concurrence from the director, files their notice of exemption, then when that project is ready for state permitting, maybe 1600 Lake or Streambed Alteration Agreement permitting, at that point we would still issue a permit like we normally do. And at that point, when we make the decision to issue the permit, we would file our own notice of exemption, and we would cite the statutory exemption that we've been talking about today. So that's the CEQA piece. Another part, I've seen a couple questions asking about other permits and bottlenecks in the process of getting your project moving forward. And I just want to mention again, and Chuck alluded to it earlier, we're really looking at a holistic approach to environmental review and permitting. And so we're building restoration permitting tools like the restoration management permit. We're looking at restoration consistency determinations on both project specific and programmatic federal biological opinions. And we're also thinking about making some changes to our Lake and Streambed Alteration Agreement itself that might allow for a more coordinated and holistic approach, where maybe if we really can do this right, we'll end up with a one-stop shop with a single CDFW permit covering all of our regulatory authorities. So we really are thinking about all this. We're really looking for ideas.
Thank you, Brad. I'm trying to scroll through these questions as well. Jen, you see any that are popping out at you?
I think there was some confusion about the 401 certification. Can you guys speak to that? How sort of those conceptually fit together? I recognize not all the specifics, but at least maybe give folks a little more detail just about that process. I know you've been part of it. The general order.
Yeah, I can try and take a shot at that. So there's this proposed general order for statewide habitat restoration projects. These would be projects that are that currently don't qualify for the general order for small habitat restoration projects, which has been around for several years. This is something that the State Water Board has been working on with the regional boards for quite some time. A few months back, an EIR went out for public review. It's a programmatic EIR and a draft general order. It covers the whole series of project types. And it's an important thing to think about and maybe learn more about that process when also thinking about this new SERP exemption, because it seems like maybe the general order might be a little more open to what we might term as multi-benefit restoration projects. They have project types that are primary purpose restoration, but may have some other elements as part of the project. For example, there's a water conservation project type that not only would include the construction of the restoration, but possibly some infrastructure and ongoing maintenance and management. And so there are I think some differences, and it really would pay off to look at both. And so the 401, a large habitat restoration, is not a CEQA exemption. It's different than a CEQA exemption. It is using a programmatic environmental impact report along with some subsequent steps by the lead agency. These steps are going to be a much lower effort, we believe, than the lead agency doing a standalone CEQA document. It's probably going to save a whole lot of time. It's a great option. And so, as that tool rolls out and your projects are getting ready for environmental review and permitting, it really is important to look at both tools and find the best fit. And the more lanes we have for these restoration projects and the more options, really the better, because we can really fine tune the tools that make these things happen quickly.
Thanks, Brad. We seem to be getting quite a few projects that land in the restoration world and multi-benefit world. And I think the key here is for us to first recognize and ask ourselves, what is the project, and does it answer, the first two sections of A, right? Is the project to do those things? And is it truly a restoration project? And is that multi-benefit still tied to restoration, or is it some other benefit that's not restoration? And I think it lands where Director Bonham mentioned, we've got these two kind of categories of, we can all close our eyes and truly see restoration project. And then we've got, close your eyes and you see this kind of fuzzier area. And I think to answer all of the questions that we're getting, and there's several of them, it's really incumbent on us to figure out where we fall within that. And is it truly restoration, and looking back at the law and what it says the project has to be. And again, back to that consultation with us to talk about whether the project will fit, should fit, could fit, or can it be modified before we move down that path of trying to take on that project altogether and then decide if this is the right pathway for CEQA. I think that's going to be the key. And honestly, I think there's about 15 or 20 questions in here that are really trying to grapple with that, as are we. And so the proof is in the pudding, and I think we'll just need to talk about it more as we move through these and really understand the specifics of each of those projects.
Yeah, and Chad, this is let me lay up another plug out, and it's kind of, I don't know how many people of the 600 that are in the dialogue I know. So this is, I suppose, a risk a little bit, but those of you that know me, look, my style, just be direct. Maybe this is a little too touchy-feely, but like, I know people get super frustrated with us, our department, on a variety of things. But look, when isn't in a family there a lot of frustration? I mean, we've got Thanksgiving coming up next week, right? And thank God, at least on my end, there's adult beverages involved. After we're all vaccinated and boosted. But so the art of this exemption, in my mind, let's not grind each other to death on it. Because if we're in that space, it indicates square peg, round hole. We're not thinking smartly, and we're all fighting with each other. And that's not healthy. We're trying to use a new opportunity judiciously, effectively, and then maintaining it and having the sunset extended. So that's a little interpersonal plea or advice. And we got to subject ourselves to the same kind of culture on our side and be aware, like awareness of how this conversation is being, felt and lived on your side. It's kind of a goofy comment, but I just think it's part of the uniqueness of the moment. Jen, I see you come off.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with what you're saying. I didn't think it was cheesy. I will also have adult beverages at Thanksgiving. But what I thought you were going to say is what I was going to say, and don't shoot me. You can't. I'm far away. You're asking what are these projects? When is it available to us? We actually are looking for projects to pilot. So if, to Chad's point, you look at that list and you think like, this is a no-brainer. We think this fits. Bring it to us. We want to, you get to be the guinea pig, so consider that. But, we are interested in finding some projects to try test this out. I think with the idea of starting as both Chad and Chuck have said, of, starting with the ones that are really sort of straightforward, working through the kinks, and then allowing ourselves to be, more creative over time. But really, we don't have a secret list. We need you to bring them to us. So I'm putting out a call now. That could be a risk because we might get a lot, but I think the door is open. We're really looking for ways to get this rolling.
And I'll up the ante on that, and it'll probably drive Brad. Brad may resign from his job, but like when this became law, and ever since, and I believe it was in the presentation, we actually want to use it before the end of the year. Now, end of year is shrinking, but if there's a no-brainer out there, fill out the template, call us. Let's see if we can use it by the end of the year.
Yeah, to that point, maybe Brad, Matt, we had a question in here regarding where folks can get this slide deck and the recording. I believe we're going to put that on our Cutting the Green Tape webpage for now, so that it's accessible. And can we confirm that? And if so, can we maybe find that question and post it live so folks have that link of where it will be when we're done?
Yeah, we will post a link to the web. It'll be in a couple places where it'll be redundant. We'll put it on our granting pages. We're unveiling a new standalone Cutting the Green Tape web page. This is sort of a new area. Our website or department is broken up into these different categories of functions, and this is an area that straddles a lot of different functions of the department. So it'll be in a number of places. We'll send out I'll post a link today, and we'll send something out following the meeting. We're creating a new email list specific to this, so folks can sign up and receive updates. So yeah, we'll post that info. There's a question about whether or not we can post a map to track where projects have been approved for this exemption, and that's I think something we can certainly consider and I think might be useful, and we're going to post any projects that go forward will be posted on our website as well. That is part of the process.
Yeah, and I think we have another question that's right on, Jennifer and Chuck. Maybe you want to take this one, and it's dealing with, we spent a lot of time in Cutting the Green Tape talking about, restoration, true restoration, voluntary restoration. Where do we want to do it? This CEQA exemption seems to broaden that conversation into the mitigation world, which is still restoration, but it might be tied to, mitigation for a project or something that's happening somewhere else. And maybe you can speak to the intent and the scope of what this exemption allows.
I'll try. I'm not the department's attorney, and maybe this would be the moment to turn off the recording. I'm just joking. Here's my take on the question. I would just start by advising people, go read the literal words of 21080.56, which is the resources code with the exemption. And step one, CEQA doesn't apply to a project that's exclusively, and there's some definitions. None of those speak to mitigation. Then the next is it's permissible to have incidental public benefits. So that's really not about the question of mitigation. Then you get a part which you've got to satisfy the fact of long-term net benefits, et cetera, and have procedures and ongoing maintenance for protection of environment. So the statutory term really doesn't contemplate or deal with this question of mitigation, I think, as it's coming to us in the Q&A here. Then the rest of the statute's about concurrence on those other criteria. There is an important proviso. The project remains subject to all other applicable federal, state, local laws and regulations. But that doesn't prohibit its availability for mitigation projects that are restoration projects. And the project shall not weaken or violate any applicable environmental or public health standards. The rest of the statute's about transparency and posting results. So if there's any space in the statute that may have a connection to what I think the motive of the question is, hey, why would you use it on mitigation projects? Because that's somebody's legal obligation. Well, I would theoretically say you can have a legal obligation to do restoration, and restoration's good. So it seems like it's potentially available as, a tool, the exemption, so long as there's nothing really going on in this thing about subject to all other applicable federal, state laws and shall not weaken any applicable environmental or public health standards. That's my take personally. Jen, I don't know if you see it any differently. And I'm just talking out loud openly as the policy person, not anybody's CEQA lawyer.
Yeah, and I prompted it because I know it is on people's minds, and there's sort of, you state it the way I see it. There's mitigation that sort of stands alone as part of just a restoration project that might use mitigation dollars, or it might be adjacent to a construction project for something else. This cannot be used to make that construction project for something else happen. That is very clear to me. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so you can't quote me, but that's pretty obvious. But that said, I think, to some extent, all the restoration we do is taking care of a past harm. And so mitigation that is straight up restoring habitat, I think, is something we should be looking to use this exemption for when it's appropriate.
And I think the tentacle of this question also runs over to another thing in the Q&A, and we're all grappling with, what's this part around construction, right? And look, y'all know as practitioners today, imagine a hypothetical. So y'all are asking us hypotheticals. Imagine a hypothetical, we all stipulate, it's a no-brainer, great restoration project, low controversy. In fact, no controversy, since I'm making the hypothetical. And you would all unanimously agree it has a construction involved in it for the purpose of the project, restoration. What project like that anymore doesn't have construction in it? And y'all all know that was a kind of a hang up within the CEQA construct, but for this exemption. But we also could forecast there's going to be stuff that might be on the margin, and you really scratch your head. Construction, but for what? I think that's going to be, sensitive and a gray space, and important to be really careful about, both y'all bringing us projects and us contemplating that type of project under this exemption.
I think the other thing, maybe to just reiterate, we're just still seeing a couple of questions related to just the communication process, and how is the public informed about these projects? How is the department informing the public about when somebody submits a project to us, whether the lead agencies are working through it, and are they doing diligence with just working and reaching out to the public that may be impacted by the project on their own timelines? And I think that's something that maybe we can talk to a little bit. Again, just reiterating that part of our process in setting this up is that we're asking lead agencies to do diligence in all of these arenas. And we're trying under the letter of the law to request that the agencies, when they come to us and when we consult with them, they're proving to us, they're showing to us that they've done that. We're not taking this adventure on here, or wanting to take this adventure on to cause problems and create issues in local communities and in different places. We want to work together with those parties. We want to work together with the lead agencies to ensure these projects can get done and they're meaningful for California. So it's a little bit of trust, I think, on all parts. It's a little bit of trust but verify from our side. And we're trying to build some tools into this process that help to support that and ensure that when we bring something as staff to our director for a concurrence approval, we've crossed those T's and dotted those I's. And I think that's part of this cautiously walking forward as we start to take on a couple of projects and just make sure that we're setting a pathway both with those initial projects, but also for the incoming projects so that they can see how other parties have done this and what it actually takes to hopefully make these things move forward smoothly and be successful.
And on the success front, and maybe this is also a culture dynamic and too much sharing, but be totally direct about this. The department ends up being in the middle of almost all permitting in the state of California. And that's a function of, 38 million people, fifth biggest economy, and there's activity everywhere, and there's typically a plant or an animal. So a lot of the department's recent decadal orientation is dealing with the incoming of a project which has an impact. And what our mentality is mitigating, avoiding, minimizing the impact of a project. And what's happened historically is the same apparatus that's struggling with that then gets a project which is for restoration. And it falls into our structure where we're just so busy dealing with projects that are about development per se compared to restoration benefit per se. That's why we now have this cutting the green tape team, and we're directing them, you're the place all these types of projects are going, because the mentality is they're good, let's get them done. And I don't mean to suggest development projects are bad, but I think y'all that are participating understand the distinction we're trying to figure out on our end as we structure ourselves to create an entirely separate space for the type of stuff we're talking about here.
And I would add to that, this is a more broad cutting green tape point, but certainly something I lived through as a federal regulator for a very long time. There are a lot of rules in California at the state and federal level, and they did not get written to work together, right? So anytime we can find ways to be more efficient and effective and still get the end goal accomplished, that's good for all of us, right? That means we're spending the money on the thing that we're trying to actually get done. And so I see cutting green tape, it's very specific to restoration, but if it teaches us all how to do our jobs better, whether it's through better coordination, pre-planning, better dialogue, better collaboration overall, I think that is beneficial to everyone, because people will support strong environmental regulations when they're working. And when they're not working, we get a lot of pushback. And that's not, at the end of the day, we need them to be strong and effective in doing what they're designed to do. So that's a long way of saying, like, let's work together to show success, because I think it's to all of our benefit.
So Brad, maybe this is for you, I'll work off the scenes here to try and post the questions we've been getting about what's the address to the webpage and what's the address to submitting restoration projects or questions for us. We have a couple things. It looks like we posted in the chat, but the chat's not live. So I'll put that in, I'll try to find the answer or the questions and answer that. But in the meantime, we've got a couple of questions, Brad, that maybe we can go back and kind of talk about if you have a project, there's certain CEQA pathways, right? There's exemptions that exist now. There's HREA. There's a full-blown EIR CEQA process. There's this new statutory exemption we have here. There's the board. Maybe if you can kind of walk through, why somebody would choose a door that they might want to go through, or how this exemption applies in amongst all of the different avenues you can take as a project proponent to satisfy CEQA.
Yeah, and I think maybe one of the first things that folks should think about doing is just contacting us now that we've started the Cutting the Green Tape program and have permanent staff. That's something we can definitely help you with. And it's actually something like solving a puzzle and actually a bit fun to try to figure this out. But my general advice to folks is if you do have a project that fits under the Small Habitat Restoration General Order and HREA, for example, and that's projects that the current criteria are 5 acres or less and 500 linear feet of stream impact or less, go that way. That is a great option for you. It is exempt, categorically exempt under CEQA. It's a class 33 small habitat restoration exemption. By going through the small habitat restoration 401 process with your regional board, you save some steps. And also you can then come to us, or you can come to us previously and go through one of our 2 HREA lanes, which provide an approval that's the equivalent of both CEQA take authorization and a lake or stream bed alteration agreement. So that is really a gold standard for smaller projects. If you have a larger project, it's larger than 5 acres or more than 500 linear feet, then you have really right now, or at least in the near future, you'll have the 2 options of this new statutory exemption that we've been talking about today, and also the upcoming large habitat restoration general order and programmatic EIR. And I think it kind of goes back to a lot of themes that we've been talking about here. You know, look at the language in the statute, subdivisions A through D. Chuck just read them again a few minutes ago. You know, talk to us. Let's work out, you know, what we all think collaboratively with the lead agency. We think this is a good fit for your project, because if it is, then this is a great choice. Let's exempt the project, move forward. We'll save $100,000 of restoration dollars to prepare, you know, a big CEQA document. And that's, you know, being mindful of the stakeholder coordination and other concerns that we've talked about already. If we're worried that a project doesn't fit under the new SERP exemption, then I think that the large habitat restoration general order and programmatic EIR allows for some more flexibility. The projects that might have some construction components, for example, and so that would be another fine way to get through the CEQA process. And in looking at some projects recently, some of the ones that we've funded recently through our watershed restoration grants branch, we've seen a real mix. We've seen projects that appear to be, you know, 99% restoration, but there's one stream crossing for a resident that needs to be rebuilt. So is that a construction activity not solely related to habitat restoration, or what is it? And so, you know, again, it's working through this you know, fairly complex language in the statute. But I would look to this, I think, for many projects as the first step. And then if it's not a fit, then let's look at the programmatic EIR as a really good alternative. Hopefully that's helpful.
You know, it's a goofy way to translate that, Brad, but it's almost like, and y'all bear with me, all y'all, the plural of y'all, it's like we're trying to figure out a way to be customer service. You want to do restoration somehow. We now have a suite of options, not just us. If you come to us, we also have connectivity to other important leaders, you know, at other agencies. And you come with something to Brad and his team, and they're thinking about how to get this stuff done, and they can give you the kind of feedback, you know, Brad just laid out, dealing with the hypotheticals he brought up. That's where we're trying to evolve towards, I think.
And I just want to add that I heard Brad say it's kind of fun and like a puzzle. So that makes him one of my people, because I agree, figuring out the best tool to use, having the right person that's excited to help you with that is really a benefit. So thanks, Brad. I'm glad you're there. Regulatory nerds unite.
Just for awareness, so the pace of questions is slowing down a little bit. There's a lot of duplicity, or, you know, similarity. Time check, you know, we got about 15 minutes. We don't need to.
Yeah.
They say a good Zoom meeting is a meeting where you give back a little time, but we'll stay on as long as folks want.
And we, just for the record, we will track and keep every question, comment submitted. We probably won't be able to get through everything today. Some are very specific, obviously, but we will have a record of every question and comment submitted. And the purpose of that is to really inform not only the development of the process, but an FAQ where needed, we'll follow up directly with folks and can get more information and provide more information to them. So we'll definitely do that beyond what we're able to get done this morning. We really wanted to use this as an opportunity to give folks a first glance, a first look at what we've been doing behind the scenes and our way of thinking and how we're looking at this. I think what you've heard from us is there's a lot of questions, a lot of concern, and we're navigating all of it. Some of it's going to be sort of a wait and see as we get into looking at some of the different projects. But this was a good first start.
Let me pull the panel here. How are you feeling on these questions? Do you think we've got most of the ones that aren't, too project specific that just really can't get into here, but general themes?
Yeah, and I'll clarify, there was one question I saw and other folks might be thinking the same thing. To clarify a couple things, cutting the green tape is an overlay to our existing programs, to our existing grant programs, to our existing permitting functions. It's not a new siloed program that operates separately from Prop 1 or FRGP or any of our permitting functions, but really the sort of layer to what we already do. And we're not just looking at projects for the CEQA exemption process that might be coming to us for grant funding. So this isn't exclusive for projects that only we fund. So if there's a project funded elsewhere, it certainly has the same eligibility for this exemption process.
I'm running out of questions that I think are large group kind of thematic things. But please keep sending them, because I think the key, as we mentioned before, is that we're recording this, we're saving these questions. And as we mentioned, when we do go live with the CERP webpage, we intend to have a Q&A or an FAQ kind of thing there. So having these questions in hand, letting us dig into them and be able to respond to them a little more appropriately and thoroughly will give us that opportunity to post that and make that available in probably under an FAQ or the things to know before applying. And we'll have some things on that webpage for you to dig through and be able to read. But again, always the ability to email us, check in, pick up the phone, call our regional staff that are in your local area, et cetera, to discuss your project or any questions you might have. That's what we're trying to build here. That's what we're building internally with educating our new employees as they come on, and our existing staff, as Matt just mentioned, with this overlay of the program, and just making sure that it can work and be efficient for everybody. That is our plan, and that's our hope. So we appreciate it. Can someone confirm through a comment or in the Q&A that the answers are actually getting posted to you all for the links to the website and to the email that we have set up already? Or is there a way to confirm that, John, on your end, that that's actually the public is seeing these answers for the posted questions?
It got posted a couple of times.
Okay, great.
And folks, while the chat function isn't quote unquote working, if you, John, should the public be able to click on chat and see any messages that we put in there, including those links?
If we broadcast it to everyone, yes, if they click chat, they should see it in there.
So you'll see the links there as well. And through the chat, I was able to upload a copy of today's presentation for folks that want to see it there. There were some questions. We will post it on our website. We'll send out an email newsletter to the same group with a wrap up and copies of everything. And make sure you sign up to receive those newsletters if you don't already on our website, and we'll follow up with more information as we proceed.
Yeah, I think the key there, Matt, is there's quite a few questions still coming in here at the end. Right. Of when do we expect to go live with this? Now, again, you've seen some draft templates in this presentation. If you've hung on this long, we're working through those. We're trying to create that process and build those templates and create this internal process for ourselves, but also for you in this public facing side. We anticipate that we're hoping that in January, we'll be able to go live with this, which is probably when we anticipate the webpage would go live, the information would go live, and we'd be reaching out to you. In the meantime, as we mentioned, we are trying to identify, pilot project or projects to really bolster our ability to do this successfully. We anticipate putting some template language up there, some examples up there prior to actually approving projects. So we hope that when we go live, we will have some examples for you all to see the types of information we'd like to receive with your request so that you're informed with what you need to do in the background. But again, as we actually approve projects and provide concurrence, we would be posting those for availability so folks can see kind of what's happening in that realm as well. So we hope to have that information for you. Probably January timeframe is what we're looking at. We really encourage you to use the email we've put out for questions and comments. There's a couple of suggestions that folks have. I'd love to see those come in through those email chains. We will be monitoring those. We have staff to answer those questions and help take that information into our program. So appreciate that. I really appreciate all of you participating today. I hope this was at least somewhat informative as we're all navigating this new process, and just know that the door is open for conversation. This won't be the last time you hear from us, and hopefully the next time will be to show you some examples of what we've been able to accomplish.
Have a great holiday season next week, the beginning of it, everyone. Whatever you may celebrate, Lord knows we could all use a little celebration. Be safe about it. And let's show California they can trust us as a community and use this exemption wisely for the good of the environment. So I appreciate everybody dialing in. Jen, you want to take us home on final thoughts?
Just thanks to all of your team for really the good work. This is not easy, and really looking forward to working with you. I saw a bunch of questions in the chat about the larger cutting green tape effort. DFW is definitely taking the lead on a lot of work, but there is work going on throughout the resources agency and throughout state government. So check out resources.ca.gov. Cutting green tape is one of our signature initiatives, and from there you can kind of click through to a whole bunch of different things that are happening. So or reach out to me. Be happy to loop you into future conversations about the broader work we're doing. So thanks everybody for coming today. Really appreciate you paying attention and being part of this.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.